Charlie Kirk's accused killer, Tyler Robinson, charged with aggravated murder, and Utah's District Attorney Jeffrey Gray says he will seek the death penalty. We are now learning so many more details from Robinson's mother, his roommate, his text messages, and it's all chilling. Robinson messaging his roommate, with whom he refers to as my love, telling him he used his grandfather's rifle to carry out that shooting that killed Charlie Kirk. Robinson's mother telling police that her son had recently become more pro-gay and trans rights oriented. When asked why he did it, Robinson allegedly said that there is too much evil and referenced Kirk, saying he spreads too much hate. Let's get straight to our whole team of experts now. Pierre Thomas, our chief justice correspondent. We'll start with you. I am just astounded at how many details that we received this early on this investigation from the district attorney. So much to talk about, Pierre. So many details that we learned from the mother, from the father, what they told police, to these text messages is just riveting, and it's sad.
In fact, that's what I just said a few moments ago, Kira, that this press conference was riveting in its sadness, from the way they described the way that Mr. Kirk died, how dangerous it was for the crowd, the fact that the bullet that killed Mr. Kirk whizzed by the head of the person who was asking him the question, how it was close to others, that there were children in the crowd. Then we learned new details about the DNA evidence that they believe ties him to the scene, that there's DNA evidence from Tyler Robinson, according to authorities, on the trigger of the murder weapon that was recovered near the scene, that there's DNA evidence on the cartridges, but also this riveting, sad ordeal of the mother and father seeing the released image of their son and not shrinking away from it, saying, that looks like him. And the mother calls the son, and he says, no, I was out sick both today and yesterday. And then she doesn't leave it there. She turns to her husband and said, that looks like our son. The father agrees. He ends up, confronting his son, which all ends up in a family friend who is associated with the U.S. Marshals getting involved, and then him being turned in. And then, as you said, the messages to the roommate, which many will believe is really critical to establishing that he did it, according to authorities, laying out the sequence of events that had happened, and also they are far along the line, as far as we can tell, in terms of motive. They believe that this is somehow tied to his belief that Charlie Kirk was sowing hate.
Pierre, thank you. Let's bring in our Matt Gutman now, who was there in the room when the charges were being read. And Matt, you just heard what Pierre had to say. I was listening to you earlier on the network, just detailing the back and forth of these messages with Tyler Robinson and his roommate, and then hearing more from Robinson's mother and father, and even learning about this rifle and what the parents had said about this had been a gift. And then in the text messages, Tyler Robinson talking about it was his grandfather's rifle, and then going into details about what he did to these details he was relaying to his partner about the weapon and why he did what he did, and his how he planned this all out. I mean, it's just, there was so much we didn't know that we now know, and it's just heartbreaking, Matt.
It is. It's heartbreaking on so many levels, Kira. Obviously, Charlie Kirk was murdered brutally in front of a crowd of thousands of people who watched him being shot through the neck and then essentially bleed out in front of him. And I think one of the things that the attorney here made a very fine point about is that a lot of these charges, 7 charges, were aggravated because children were present. Children witnessed this. Children were put in harm's way. And that was something that obviously is aggravating here, and that's one of the reasons that the suspect, in addition to the alleged murder being political in nature, is facing the death penalty. They're going for the death penalty. And on the other hand, there is this duality of a portrait of a very human person, a very human experience from this entire family. As you mentioned it, the mother who essentially discovered that it was her son who had done this, the kid who had got a 34 out of 36 on the ACTs, who had a 4.0, who got a full ride to college here, that kid was the one who allegedly perpetrated. She saw those pictures and said, identified him essentially. And then those text messages, and I don't think I've ever experienced a press conference in which we've read text messages that are so fulsome, so robust, so apparently, allegedly self-incriminating, and yet on the other hand, so touching. Right, with the suspect reaching out to his roommate, who is allegedly his boyfriend, who we understand, identified as male at birth, now identifies as female. And the terminology he used, he was trying to protect him. He kept calling him my love. My reason for doing this is to protect you, but also asking him to delete the messages and not speak to law enforcement. So there's this heartbreaking duality that we're seeing very tragically playing out here. And again, one of the things that also struck me was the degree to which that this group here, the prosecutor's office in Utah County, is trying to play this by the book. The degree to which the Department of Public Safety in Utah has been keeping the information close to invest, trying to play it by the book, as opposed to the FBI and FBI Director Kash Patel, who has been way out in front of these law enforcement organizations and revealing pretty significant amount of evidence that we heard about today. The note, the self-incriminating text messages, the DNA on the firearm. These are all things that the attorney told me he would have hoped to have been able to have more of a tight lid on, but didn't have the option. His important goal is to make sure that this process goes smoothly and that the suspect here gets a fair trial and is presumed innocent until the jury proves otherwise, if they intend to do that. Kira.
And Matt, it sounds like as well, according to the parents and what they told authorities, that Tyler Robinson had even said he planned on taking his own life after this happened, and the parents convinced him to come home.
Yeah, it seemed like he, again, from the text messages, we have no independent confirmation of this, but it seems that he appeared to be suicidal after he realized that he was checkmated, that there was no escape for him, that his mother wanted him to turn himself in, as did his father. That was his lot. And what was also interesting about the initial text messages with that boyfriend/roommate was that he thought he could escape. He thought that nobody would be able to figure out who did this, that he could have perpetrated the perfect crime. And then you see this sort of unfold in real time, that he realizes he couldn't get back to his weapon, and that the incriminating information was on the weapon, and that law enforcement was right around it. And then it devolves into this increasing depression and eventually into his family saying that he apparently tried or had hoped or expressed a desire to take his own life. Obviously, they dissuaded him. Kira.
Matt Gutman, appreciate your reporting so much. Let's take it to Eric Faddis now, former felony prosecutor. Eric, Tyler Robinson now facing the death penalty. What comes next?
Yes, so the ground on which he's facing the death penalty is this aggravated murder charge, where the prosecution's alleging that he created a grave risk of harm to other people. And so, the bullet could have hit somebody else. This could have caused a stampede. I think that ground is pretty solid. From there, at a jury trial phase, the jury will have to determine whether the aggravating factors outweigh the mitigating factors. So the prosecution says this political violence piece, that's aggravating. The fact that it happened in front of other children, that's aggravating. Defense is going to argue that, hey, this guy likely had no significant criminal history. He was a younger person. And so ultimately the jury's going to have to decide, do those aggravating factors outweigh the mitigating factors? And is death appropriate in this case?
As an attorney, Eric, what did you make of the district attorney and how he outlined so many details, from what Tyler Robinson's mother and father told them to these detailed messages between Robinson and his roommate, his partner?
I think, Kira, in part, it was an important exercise in transparency. We've seen kind of a social push towards transparency with the Epstein files. Director Patel is being grilled in a hearing presently. And so I think that's what the public wants. They want to know more information about what happened. And this county attorney really delved into the details here, talking about not only those messages, but also an alleged note showing an intent, DNA evidence, surveillance video. He really covered the whole gamut of summarizing the prosecution's evidence in the case. And so far, according to that list, it appears rather compelling.